The fastest way to becoming a millionaire is through your superannuation. The thing is, you need to make sure you're getting a good return. Welcome to Get Started Investing, the show where we help you make the most of your money. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode, especially after that intro.
Yes.
Today, we are answering some of the most common questions we've got around superannuation from you in the Equity Mates community. And with an intro like that, how can we not be excited about super?
Okay, so today we have 5 questions that have come from the Equity Mates community that we are going to answer. The first is, what is a good return for your super? How do you choose the right super fund? Should you be adding more to super or investing? As a couple, how can you maximize your spousal contributions? And then closing out with, how much super will you need to retire?
Okay, so 5 questions. Let's go. First one is from Ravithi in our Facebook discussion group. The question is, re-looking at my current super fund manager, Australian Super, I'm currently under their balanced option, which returned 5.47% in this last 6 months. I don't know whether that return is good, moderate, or can be better. So my question is, are any other super funds you've seen performing better? And how to know what a good return on super is?
Well, short answer, Ravidi, is 5.5% in 6 months is good.
Yeah.
If you annualize that, that's 11% over the year. And if you put some numbers to where that will get you, $500 a month invested in your super fund, or just invested generally, over 30 years at 11% is $1.2 million.
Wow, that almost is like the hook you said at the start.
There you go. Fastest way to becoming a millionaire. Could it be better though, Ren?
Yeah, so if you want to compare, there's plenty of websites out there. The best one to start with is Your Super, which is the government's website where it compares a lot of the major super funds, particularly given that Ravithi is in the Australian Super Balanced Fund. You can do some apples to apples comparisons there. There's also a bunch of third-party websites, CanStar, superrating.com, Rate City, Finder, I think, do it as well. The important thing is, Ravithi, you looked at a 6-month performance table. You've got to look long-term when you're thinking about investing. At least 5 years. With super, I would be saying probably 10 years as well. Over the past 10 years, the best balanced options sit at around 8% per year. This is on the Your Super website. So Ravithi's 5.5% in the past 6 months, annualized, that works out well. But I would just say one more thing is, if you're young, if you're working and you've got decades ahead of you, maybe think about going aggressive rather than balanced.
Yeah, that was my biggest takeaway from this question. We're both as aggressive as possible, and I think we have the time on our side to be able to do that.
Because aggressive is not like leverage and options and crypto. It is just like stocks. Yeah. It's just basically buying the index.
Yeah. And the reason that we can be aggressive at this age is because should the market be volatile and drop 20 or 30% here and there, we have the time to make up ground. But if you're thinking about retirement, you might want to, consider more balanced options. But again, nothing wrong with 11% a year.
Yeah,
That's good.
All right, Bryce, 1 question down, 4 to go. This next one is from John. I've seen a huge rise in the number of self-directed superannuation funds. Is that a better option than my current fund where I can just choose conservative, moderate, or aggressive?
So there's no right or wrong answer here, John. How you should go about choosing your super fund have a few elements. The first thing is, here in Australia, there are 3 main options you can choose from. The first is managed super fund, which is like the default super that a lot of people go into. The second is a self-directed super fund option, and the third is a self-managed super fund option. They all vary in degree of control you have over that super fund.
So to explain those differences, managed is, as you said, the standard choose your risk setting, aggressive, moderate, conservative, whatever the terminology is at your fund. Self-directed is still within a controlled super environment, but you have a little bit more control. You can maybe pick your ETFs, pick a couple of shares here and there. And then self-managed is the full, here's your super, you manage it, you do the tax reporting, it's on you situation. There are a few old rules of thumb. It used to be that self-managed super funds, you really needed $500,000 for the cost to make sense. There are some companies trying to bring that accessibility up and costs down, and you could probably get away with a bit less, but still, you just want to do an apples to apples comparison on the fees that you're paying as a percentage of your balance. And the good thing is, in my mind, self-directed funds are really starting to offer similar functionality to self-managed super funds. Not the range of assets. You can't go and buy an investment property with a self-directed super fund. That still is only in the self-managed camp. But yeah, I think the Venn diagram is starting to overlap a little bit more in terms of functionality.
Definitely. But John, the biggest question you need to ask yourself really is how much time are you willing to dedicate to this? Because just like your share portfolio, when you can choose between core and satellite and dedicating time to picking individual stocks, if you're going down the route of self-directed or self-managed, you need to spend the time creating and looking after that portfolio, which is why, and there's nothing wrong, the majority of people start at least in the managed fund in that aggressive or balanced option.
Yeah. I also think there's an argument for diversity of strategy. If you're going to do self-directed or self-managed and just buy exactly the same things that you're buying in your personal portfolio, there's a question about is that, maybe if you've got super high conviction, that makes sense. But for me, I do self-directed, but I try not to just have two portfolios that look exactly the same in different environments. I try and do different strategies and different managers in my self-directed super, just because I want that diversity of thought reflected across my portfolio.
I find psychologically I take more risk in my super fund.
Because you got such a long term.
I can't touch it. Yeah. It's literally I can't touch this for 40 years, so stuff it.
Yeah. So look, John, no right or wrong answer. It really is how much time you can dedicate to it, because if you're not going to dedicate the time, just stick to a super fund that employs the experts to do it on your behalf. All right.
Nice one.
Question 3.
Let's do it. So this is from Ash. How can I weigh up whether it's better to make concessional contributions through super or invest into my one ETF set and forget portfolio? I'm nowhere near able to hit the concessional contribution cap of $30,000 in a year and have around $200 a fortnight to invest. How would you suggest weighing up this decision?
Yeah, I love this question. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on what you want. And for me, the way I think about this is think about a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum is just, I want as much money as possible. On the other side of the spectrum is, I want as much flexibility as possible. And chart where you sit on that spectrum and then decide accordingly. Because if you're on one side, which is, I just want as much money as possible when I retire, is the caveat, it always makes sense to go hard into your super. And that's because it's the only free kick you get in finance is the tax benefit on super. The concessional tax rate on super contributions is 15%. Your marginal tax rate is 30% at a minimum. Let's say you're at the top marginal tax rate of 45%, then you're saving 30 cents on the dollar by putting it into super rather than into your personal investment portfolio. That compounds over a lifetime of investing and is millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars at retirement. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is, I want to maximize my flexibility, because the money you put into super you won't be able to access until the preservation age when you retire. Currently it's in that 55 to 60 range, but really by the time we retire, it'll be higher.
You would think so.
I would think so. The beauty of investing in the stock market is it offers daily liquidity. If you need to pull that money out, if you have an if you have something that you've been building towards, or if you need that money, you can access it. You lose that in the super environment. And so, that's why flexibility errs on the side of paying the more tax, but keeping it outside of super. So the question is, where do you sit on that spectrum? And Bryce, let me ask you, where do you sit on that spectrum?
Currently, I sit on the full side of flexibilities. I don't add any extra contributions to my super at the moment because I know that I'm going to want access to a nice pool of capital and assets outside of super, hopefully before I retire.
Yeah, I'm the same. For me, investing is about building choice in my life. And when I think about that choice, it's a bit grey, but there's probably a few key instances where Alice and I live in the future, how much I work when we have young kids, my post-equity mates' career choices. All of those things are pre-retirement age for me. So I want that flexibility sooner, and so I invest accordingly.
Well, speaking of Alice, your partner, and my wife Harriet, I didn't actually mention her, but hello Harriet. That leads nicely into our next question, which is around splitting super with your partner. And it's from Stephen. His question is, any info on super splitting with your partner? My understanding is there is no immediate benefit, but may be beneficial if there is a significant disparity between incomes when considering caps later in life. Good question.
Yeah.
Often one that is not spoken about as much.
Yeah, and if you've heard about the gender pay gap, the gender super gap is larger and perhaps has more profound consequences in people's retirement. The average super balance at the time of retirement for women is 25% lower than the average balance for men. But here's the stat, 31% of women rely on their partner's income to meet retirement living expenses.
Wow.
So that is why splitting super or spousal contributions has become such a big topic. So Bryce, how can we do it?
So there's two ways to contribute to your spouse's super. The first, you may be able to split contributions you've already made to your own super by rolling them over to your spouse's super. This is known as contributions splitting super benefit. The second is that you can make a super contribution directly to your spouse's super, treated as their non-concessional contribution, and you may get an entitlement to the tax offset as well.
Now, I think there is so many technicals here. There's so many conditions and terms when it comes to where the tax benefits are, if you can get them. You really do want to speak to an accountant or a financial advisor if you want to go down this route. Generally, contributions you make to your spouse's super are treated as their non-concessional contributions, and you may be able to claim a tax offset of up to $540 per year if you make a super contribution on behalf of your spouse if their income is below $40,000. So, in the instance where they're working part-time to look after the family or for whatever reason. But it is just like there are so many terms and conditions attached to it that speak to an expert if you want to run down this route.
Absolutely. To close out, the one that everyone always thinks about is how much do I actually need in my super fund to retire?
I mean, that's
and
the point.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, look, there's no one size fits all answer, but the good news is it's less than you probably think. So we found two surveys, both from 2025, so both current, that give a sense of what Australians think they need in their super balance. Australian Retirement Trust did a survey. They found on average Australians estimate $940,509 in their superannuation account when they retire. Very specific estimate there, but 940 grand. And then the Australian also published a survey that found Australians estimated they would need 1.6 million to live comfortably in their post-working years. But here's the good news. Australians are overestimating how much they probably need. Now, obviously, these numbers will inflate over time, but based on today's dollar value, a couple of retirement organisations suggest it's far less than 940K or 1.6 million.
Yeah, so the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia's retirement standard says $545,000 for a single person and $640,000 for a couple is all that's required. The Super Consumers Australia found that based on a retirement age of 65 and an average life expectancy of 90, a medium expenditure couple needs $402,000 and a single person $301,000, while a high expenditure couple requires $1 million and a single $745,000 to retire. So all of those numbers below, as you said, Ren, the expectation that Australians have.
Now, obviously, those numbers are based on today's dollars. If people want to think about what that will mean when they retire, you can just put it in a compound calculator. Think about how long you have until you need to access your super. Think about what inflation will be long term, 2-3%, and take some of these retirement standard numbers and project them forward, and then you might have an idea of what your goal would be when you retire. But yeah, I think that our takeaway is it's going to probably be less than you think you need. And the reasoning for that is just because when you start drawing down principal as well, not just living off interest, you can make things last a bit longer.
Yeah. All right, well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. A massive thank you to Stephen, to Ash, to John, and to Ravithi for the questions. We really appreciate you sending them in. If you'd like to ask a question, there's a link in the show notes and description below where you can leave us a voicemail, or head to equitymates.com/contact, and there's a form there. Come and join us in the Facebook discussion group. Plenty of chat always happening. It's hard for us to keep up with what's going on, but we love it. But that's it, Ren. Great to chat. We'll pick it up next week.
Sounds good.